Welcome everyone, and happy Archives Month. And thank you for attending the celebration of the South Dakota State Poetry Society Digital Collection. My name is Michelle Christian, and I'm the Archivist and Special Collections Librarian here at Briggs Library. Today we'll share with you the digitization project that brought the South Dakota State Poetry Society's past petals online. We'll also hear from the Society's president, Bruce Roseland, and along with our own in-house poet, Ruby Wilson, and the State Poet Laureate, Christine Stewart Nunez. Sorry about that. A few announcements before we get started. There is a brochure available in the back about the poetry collection, which also includes a QR code to the project's website. Also, there is an evaluation form for the event. Please take time to fill it out. There's also a QR code on the evaluation form as well, so if you'd rather fill it out electronically, that would be great. To be notified about library events such as this, please sign up for our Friends of the Library newsletter. We want to acknowledge that South Dakota State University is on the ancestral lands of the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota people. We would also like to thank the South Dakota Humanities Council, an affiliate of the National Endowment of the Humanities, for the grant that supported the digitization project and purchased the technical equipment that made this hybrid program possible. The project began in earnest during the summer and with the hiring of Abby Mueller. Where are you, Abby? Abby's back there. She's a junior in the School of American and Global Studies. And Daniel Spangler, a graduate student in English. Abby learned to use the large format scanner and scanned the entire run of Past Petals. Daniel was hired to do the transcription, and both of them worked tirelessly over the summer. Over 17,000 pages were scanned and transcribed. They deserve to be acknowledged for their hard work. Now that the scanning has been completed and the issues are available online, I want to share with you how to access the collection. So we're going to start here. I think many of us are familiar with the library's website, so we're going to start here, and then we'll navigate to the Archives and Special Collections site. And we'll go down. And under our subject guides, there is a subject for South Dakota poetry. And on this page, we have links to our archival collection inventories, one for the South Dakota State Poetry Society records, David Allen Evans' papers, and Audrey Visser's collection as well, both of whom were former poet laureates for the state of South Dakota. The collection also has links to the digital collection on DLSD, and it has links to each of the volumes that are online. So if we go to the collection site, click there. Come on. Of course. So, but here it is. I knew something like that would happen, so I had another page open. So this is the first volume of number 1. And so, wait for that to load. Oh, please work. Let's see. Let's try to go back. Are we actually having problems? Glenn, do you know? Okay. Maybe. Wonder what is going on here. Let's just pick a volume. I am really sorry about this. I don't know. Well, we'll just move along on the. It does come up, and they're all there. 1 through 90, volumes 1 through 90 are online. So, anyway, so before I hand off to Bruce, I want to also mention Daniel Spangler's impressions of the project. Oh, there we are. Okay, so if you open up into here. Please. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about what Daniel sent me. He's not able to be here today, but he wanted to make sure I mentioned his impressions when he was transcribing the magazine. He states, "Overall, I was struck by the overwhelming sense of endurance within the poetry in the magazine. Poets would write for years, complaining sometimes of the cold, others of the grasshoppers, others of the vacant space itself, but always a sense of endurance, and all the while aware of the beauty of the state." He was so inspired by doing the transcriptions that he even wrote his own poem. So I'll read it with his permission. Tower skies. They stretch far above me, the tower skies, radiance barely contained by silent, somber clouds. It dives down and sweeps through me in a swift downdraft, and I breathe beauty. It is so in South Dakota. But my chest cracks and burns in the crushing icy grasp of these tower skies. How can I cherish this thing beautiful and cold, a thing that tears cruelly at the ones I love? It is so in South Dakota. Yet we are unable to bring ourselves to despair. We cannot give it up in spite of our pain. The snow falls and we plant our feet and dig trenches that will last us the rest of our lives. It is so in South Dakota. So the page finally came up. Yay. So as you can see, the pages, you can click through here, and you can see the pages come up there. You can see them larger if you click up into here, and you can make it bigger so you can see deep into there. And you can continue on by going there. And then that. And you can get back to the normal page by just clicking up in the corner. So they're all on there. It's all exciting. Every page. I don't know. Bruce, would you like to come up and talk?
First of all, I probably should give you a little background on myself. I'm a farmer and rancher by trade. I did go to Brookings for 2.5 years, and I went up to Grand Forks, got a master's in sociology, a minor in statistics, and did something that a lot of people questioned me over. I went back to the ranch and farm. I was the son of an only farmer rancher, so so I grew up, went through the 80s and everything, and I saw a lot of tough stuff. A lot of what I write about is about changes. So I wrote my first book 2003 or so, and then I wrote another book, this one. Wrote 5 more since. Now, right around 2006, I went to my first South Dakota State Poetry Society meeting. And I went to another one. And at that time, most of the folks in there were, oh, in their 70s, 80s. And it's kind of cute. They all sat around the living room and round robin read poems. Something very charming about that. Shortly after that, they just simply got too old to drive. They kind of quit. I went to a meeting in Chamberlain, and I was invited to become a board of directors. So I did 3 years of that, and then I became treasurer, and this is my third term as president. Now, going back to those ladies, quite a few of them, had like a 100 run publicized books. And, they'd hand them out to their family and friends and so on. Then generally they would end up in an attic someplace, and unfortunately I got a feeling a lot of them ended up in a burn pile. And at that time I thought that was a shame. When Christine brought up having an archive, I went, whoa, that's exactly what we need, a collection. I can give you all kinds of examples. Redbird, which is our first posthumous poet of merit, I never heard of her. She mostly wrote in the, teens and 1920s. I didn't realize, she was a Native American. I didn't realize it then, but she cut quite a swath in South Dakota. She gave readings to the governor. So, and we didn't know anything about her. So somebody like that was almost lost to our times. And the South Dakota Poet of Merit ends up in this archives. I think that's very important. My books, all of them I believe now, are in the archives. I encourage other people to have them in the archives. And then Michelle said she wanted my notebooks. And by the way, I talked to Charles Luton, and yes, he'd been looking for a home for his notebooks, the notebooks I told you he carried around in his book bags. He's been looking for a home for them. And I think that is something. I think that is it. A lot of stuff we think is ordinary now, later in life, is not. 100 years later, we find out it is not ordinary. There were giants in the earth, and we live among them. And they walk among us. And they're just ordinary people, but they do extraordinary things. Now, saying all that, I'm going to read you a poem here. Called A Prairie Prayer. Here, on this ark of grass, sun, and sky, I will stay and see if I thrive. Others leave. They say it's too hard. I say, hammer my spirit thin. Spread it horizon to horizon. See if I break. Let the blizzards hit my face. Let the heat of summer's extreme try to sear the flesh from my bones. Do I have what it takes to survive, or will I shatter and break? Hammer me thin. Stretch me from horizon to horizon. I need to know the character that lies within. I want to touch a little further beyond my reach for the something that I seek. Only then let my spirit be released. So I thank you for your attention, and I thank the library for setting up these archives.
As most of you know, I'm Ruby Wilson, and I work here in the archives. I'd like to read a few poems from, one is from Four Quarters to a Section, which is the South Dakota State Poetry Society's anthology of the chapbook anthology. So, first poem. Most of my poems are set on a small acreage where I live with my husband. Good usable items. My husband chortles as I pick up rocks on our walk. He gives me that over-the-glasses look, like the one at the concert on Friday when the orchestra directors shook maracas and danced in Hawaiian shirts as their students soberly played. That look reserved for adults acting undignified. How is this different than your boulevard shopping? I ask. Every spring for 2 weeks, the houses in town belch out discarded items that wait on the boulevards to be picked up by city personnel, free of charge, or recyclers like my husband. They are good usable items, he says, like the inkjet printer we're still using and the bicycle wheels on our garden cart. These rocks are useful tools, I tell him. I use them as mulch and to protect new plants from the mower and the dog. They're easy to find this time of year before the roam grass buries them. If they're too big to carry, I roll them under the fence so farmers mowing this ditch won't break a sickle blade. I sometimes see people who carry weights in both hands as they jog on the bike trail. This is good weight-bearing exercise to improve my bone density, I say, as I alternately flex my arms and lift the rocks over my head. A friend of mine once asked her husband to give her a 4-foot rock for their lawn as an anniversary present. He gives me another look as he trudges along, his jacket pockets bulging with 20 pounds of rocks that he's carrying for me. The next poem was one that I wrote after reading a couple of Mary Oliver poems about the ocean. The poems were tides, and the poet compares human nature to the oceans from which we came. Another ocean. I read her poems about the sea and wish that I lived near one until I remember the wind that weaves soil, grass, and sky, the design of fox and pheasant tracks in the snow, and the owl I hear at night who leaves fierce signs of its hunting nearby, and my silent ski trail that the wind erases through the prairie from which I came. And I have a couple poems from Pask Petals, volume 90. Morning commute. After partying all night, the moon hangs like a mirror ball low in the western sky. She sinks into the soft sheets of dawn, ready to call it a day as the world spins toward the light. I'm going to quit.
Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Christine Stewart Nunez. Oh, there.
I don't know if you can hear me or see me yet.
Yep.
Now we can. Okay, great. So I really appreciate the invitation to talk about two of my favorite subjects, which is poetry and archives. I was thinking about when Michelle and I were sitting in Michelle's office, and I said, I have some students that I want to do some real world writing with. So what projects do you have in the archives that we could engage with? And then we did something on food and cookbooks, if I remember correctly, with that project. But I really love bringing students into archives to do research and to produce creative work as a result of that research. There's always something that can be discovered in whatever archives, especially if the goal is to produce creative work, because the imagination and research can combine to produce some pretty amazing um, products or poems or essays or fiction. So Michelle, I think we should follow up on that one project again to see what happened with that. I think the pandemic kind of dropped our plans with some of that work, but anyway. So one of the other aspects of the archives that I've been really appreciative of is the willingness to and the excitement around and the willingness to put resources in the poetry collection with South Dakota State Poetry Society. Like it's been already mentioned, I think we started with Audrey Visser's collection because Chuck Woodard had a lot of Audrey Visser's work, and so I worked and Chuck worked with Michelle and others to get most of her work that we had safely into the archives, and then to establish a kind of track or way of getting poets' work into the archives. Because it saves it for forever, and it allows people to go back and look closely and deeply about what were people capturing at the time. And I think that's really valuable because because it's a grassroots picture of the state of writing at any given time. You don't need much money to write poetry. You can write it in your notebooks and share it with your friends. As Bruce already talked about, going to some of the early South Dakota State Poetry Society meetings that he attended. But to keep that for long periods of time and to share that with other audiences, it takes an investment. And that's what the South Dakota State Poetry Society has been about. It's been not just collecting the works of poets, but choosing the best ones to put in its Past Petals volume, to really reach out and get new writers interested in publishing their work in the literary journal. Also to keep open to the writers who've been writing for a while and to keep them in conversation over time. I think that's and to do it without costing a lot of money for the poets in the state. So there's a membership fee to be a member of the South Dakota State Poetry Society, but basically that goes into publishing of Past Petals, which because of printing and design takes some fun. I don't think folks understand when they compare the poetry scene of the local poetry scene and the inexpensiveness of it compared to the national poetry scene, which can take a serious investment of thousands of dollars and lots of time and effort to send work out into national journals, even regional journals. It's a serious time and effort, but this gives us a way of keeping track of and participating in the conversation of poetry that's live and happening and ongoing, and makes it very accessible for all sorts of people in the state and in the region and beyond. So I think that's another thing to say about the archives and the relationship between the South Dakota State Poetry Society and Briggs is that it's accessible. You can, if you have an internet connection and a computer, you can find it, you can read it, you can look at it, you can. I know people who are interested in finding their grandparents or great-grandparents' work because they know that it was published in a Past Petals somewhere, but they don't have the volume. I've had people tell me that they think that someone they knew in their families were published in it. So this is an opportunity for people to connect that way as well. So I'm really excited about this project and so thankful that you saw it to fruition, and it will keep unfolding over time and keep poetry alive in the state for historical reasons, as well as to create a current space for poetry. I know that's something that the library has valued. So I think those are the things, the kind of notes that I wanted to mention about the importance of this, um, as, and I have two poems I can read, and I can answer questions too about any of my role in helping with the archives or decisions or what happens. I'm not sure what the plan was for other things, but I can talk more about any of those things that I've just said. But I have two poems from my latest book, The Poet and the Architect, which you can buy at South Dakota State at the South Dakota Art Museum gift shop. And these two poems were published in Past Puddles. And because I was the editor for several years, I didn't often publish my own work. That's kind of taboo. But I did a couple times early on when I was learning to edit Past Puddles because I made mistakes. Like one of the first times I realized that I put two poems in, like I was editing it and I put the same poem in by the same person like twice in the journal and I didn't realize it. So I got panicked, and before I sent it to print, I needed another poem, so I just put one of my own in. So that was a kind of funny story in the learning process. And so, but there have been a couple poems since I stopped editing the journal, and that I submitted for publication that were accepted. And the first one is called "The Poet Prepares for Love," and this also is an acrostic poem, and the pieces come from the Copperline collection in the South Dakota Art Museum. There are three pieces by artist Ruth Leaf, and so I started with an epigraph from her. And this project that this poem came from was also a result of a fellowship that I got at SDSU to spend time in the Art Museum's archives, right, in their permanent collection. So again, that use of what the university offers to promote student and faculty work was really, really important when I was at SDSU. And here's the result. What is the result? Poet prepares for love with an epigraph from Ruth Leaf. Being more abstract allowed me to express the essence of things rather than reproducing what I saw. Peony. Bashfulness hides in the knot and pearl white petals trimmed red. The spring's blossoms, stamens are velvet threads, bunched and centered, a goldenrod tassel gathered in wait for wind. Nosegay. Flowers clutch, leaf to leaf, ruby bloom to ruby bloom, this traditional tango bouquet where stems brush as if thighs pressed in a cross-step walk in a closed embrace. A mix in amity, stems of meadow grasses and wildflowers, heavy with sun, arc as if breeze blown, and here they thrive with leaves intertwined. They touch in summer's cold flesh. And then another one later on in the book is called Research, and it also has archival connections. Not surprised, but this happened to be published in Past Puddles as well. Research. My husband pores over aerial photographs of land to the east of our South Dakota home. Berms in the farmland, clusters of trees, faint lines through crops help him trace a railroad line long abandoned. He zooms to street view and identifies caissons once used to support bridges. They're crumbling, nearly obscured with grasses and trees. He might drive there to collect the taste of dust in his mouth. When he's gathered enough evidence, he digs around archives, ads, maps, photographs, anything to recreate a history lost in the landscape. We both search this way, moments of discovery and loss juxtaposed until it transforms. I sift through memories, hold one up to the light and replay it over and over and slow. I consider all its facets, its tension. Sometimes art amplifies or crystallizes emotions. Sometimes the body makes meaning for itself. No matter what the evidence, we counter the fading effects of time as our disciplines whisper. Tell where you've been, and we will know where you go. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question, Michelle.
Yes.
For you, I think. So, you digitized and then transcribed.
Yes.
And then transcription. So,
There'll
you
be.
digitized, you could see the printed page. So, tell me about the transcription part.
We are having a little technical difficulty getting those into the system quickly, so we're doing it by hand. It's a little more time consuming, but it'll happen. So in order to get it transcribed, we kind of did a skirt around. We didn't have the students go and type directly in. We had them start with a Google product where they would take the image, and the image would go into a Google product and pop out the transcription. And about 90% of that was accurate. But there was 10% that wasn't, so the students went through and made sure that that the words were correct. So they did a quick look through to make sure everything was right. So we have it transcribed, but it's just a little more with the system we're using right now. It's complex to get it in there, but it'll be in there.
So, maybe my real question is, it's not the past pedals you're doing, it's like the other stuff, or do you have to?
Oh, that's past pedals we've done.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's already printed on their side.
It's an image rather than text.
Oh, so it's
Yeah.
searchable.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that way it's more searchable for everybody. And we would use the OCR that goes with it, but it wasn't reading it right, so it would give up weird characters. So the way we're doing it now is actually more accurate. So, yeah. So, any other questions?
I want to know how Christine likes Canada.
Oh.
I like Canada a lot. I like Canada. The library at the University of Manitoba is ginormous.
Oh, really?
Very large.
Cool.
It's exciting, that part. But when I was driving home today, like, I had to stop because there were Canadian geese in the middle of the street. And they are like, they didn't move until I got really, really close. They're everywhere, and they know that they are very revered here. So it's cold. It's colder, but I really love it. Mm-hmm.
You'll have to write a poem about Canadian geese.
I will. It takes me a while to be in the place to start writing about the place. I think when I lived in South Dakota, it was about 3 or 4 years before I produced a poem that I felt like was South Dakotan. You know, it has to kind of seep into me for a while, and I have to get used to it. But I'm starting to convert my spelling. You know, I'm starting to use the Canadian, the R-E, and putting the U's in words like honor and labor. So it's slowly happening.
Follow-up question about what poetry are you writing if it's not about the place where you are? I mean, you haven't
I'm
halted.
sorry?
Oh,
Still writing poetry. One more.
We'll get a microphone.
Sorry, Christine. I'm wondering what kinds of poetry are you writing if you're not ready to write about your place?
What poetry am I writing
Yeah.
right now?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a new book of essays coming out like any day now, and so I was working on finishing that up, and that's very South Dakota based. Most of them, I'd say that like those are very dozen, and so probably 35% of them are take place or probably takes place in South Dakota. I'm also finishing up my memoir that takes place totally in South Dakota. I've been under talks to the University Press for about a year now, and so
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to thank our speakers today. They have done an amazing job, and I love all the poetry that was read today. That's fantastic. If you'd like to see more, just contact us, and I'll show you personally how the digital archives works. Or you can navigate yourself through there. For those of you at home, I think we sent through the links to the sites earlier. But if you have questions, just feel free to contact me or the archives, and we'll be happy to help. Again, thanks everybody for speaking. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Christine. And thank you, Ruby. Thank you very much. And remember, there's cookies in the back, and there's also evaluation forms and little handouts to lead you to the collection. So, thank you.